Okay, well, what I'm going to talk about today and play about is innovation. And why? Because innovation is perhaps our only superpower. Innovation is hardwired into all of us. It's not just some magical, mystical thing that some people could do. Every baby has to innovate to figure out what's going on. Somehow, by the time they become a grown-up, they sort of stop. But innovation is our greatest superpower. And like other automatic survival skills like breathing and heart pumping, innovation is mostly involuntary. We don't actually choose to innovate. We can choose to not innovate, but our natural idea when things are happening is to say, that's not right, I can fix that. And when we do that a lot, eventually we get enough negative feedback from most of the world that we stop doing it. So that's why this first song I'm going to do is called Didn't Have a Choice. It's about not being able to not innovate. Baby, you know that it happens whenever you're near. I'm talking about ideas, not a person. I try to ignore it, but it's very clear. So listen to my voice, 'cause we didn't have a choice. Remember, it's about ideas and innovating. The point. You gotta keep on innovating because you don't have a choice anyway. So I want to talk a little bit about this instrument because this is an innovation thing too. I really like string basses, but they're kind of big and you need a station wagon. And even though I have a station wagon, a string bass takes up all the space. But this gets you 80% of the bang for the buck, and it only weighs 10 pounds. It's much easier. And it's also a short scale bass. So for those who are musical out there, because I know a lot of people in the Berkshires are pretty into music, most basses have a 34-inch scale. This has a 30. Why is that good? Because if you're a guitar player, it's closer to the length of a guitar neck, so it's not so hard to play. And who did this? The richest musician in the world. Paul McCartney plays a short scale bass, and he can play anything he wants. So bass is a really good place to start music because it tells you the tonal center and it tells you the tempo and the pitch. So if you want to be an innovator as a musician, bass is a really good place to start because that way when the other musicians in the band start playing different chords or speeding up, you can actually control the throttle. So to go a little deeper on innovation, innovation could be a lot better understood. It's a word that gets thrown around an awful lot, but I don't think it's very well understood because I've had the good fortune of spending 50 years in innovation organizations, hanging out with innovative people, and for the most part, they weren't understood by society, and sometimes not even by themselves either. So innovation begins as an involuntary thing. Creative outliers, they come into a situation, they look around, they go, that's not the way I want it to be, I'm going to do something else. And then their boss, or their parents, or their mate, or somebody says, you can't do that. We would have done that already if that could have been done. But you do it anyway because it's involuntary, because you're creative and you don't like taking orders, which a lot of creative people don't. I think the Berkshires has an awful lot of creative outliers. It has kind of an amazing population here. Musicians, painters, photographers, so many different kinds of creative people. And a lot of them weren't so good at taking orders, which is how they ended up here. They left the big city and they came to the Berkshires to do their thing and to be creative. And I think one of the first things to understand about innovation is that it's actually an involuntary thing, or at least it starts that way. Children are innovative. Once people get a mortgage and a family, not so much, because it's hard to get promoted when you're changing things around a lot. And because of that, I'm going to do another piece of music called Get Yourself Up. Because if you are going to be creative, you are going to have to get yourself up a lot, because you are going to get a lot of negative feedback. So please remember just one thing. Do not ever give up. For if you do, there'll be no one to ever lift you up. The time has come, there's no time to wait. So, why not take a chance? For if you don't, there'll be no one to ever dance the dance. Ever dance the dance. Get yourself up, get yourself up. Get yourself up, get yourself up. Get yourself up, get yourself up. Well, get yourself right up right now. You've got the power. You've got the soul. You've got the love to make you whole. You've got the love to make you whole. Get yourself up. If you want to be an innovator, you are going to have to get yourself up a lot. Innovators are change agents. The definition of an innovator is somebody who has an insight and manages to get it adopted by other people. Just having a great idea? No, you are not an innovator. You're only an innovator if it gets adopted by other people. That's what innovation is. And if you want to get your ideas adopted by other people, you're going to have to be very persistent, because the whole world is extremely resistant to change until people are so upset about the way things are. Then they're willing to try something else. So that's why I had to write a song about getting yourself up. It doesn't matter whether it's, if you want to be an inventor, a photographer, a writer, whatever you're doing that's innovative, if you want people to pay attention, you are going to have to get yourself up a lot. And because of that, I ended up writing 1,000 pages of blog postings about innovation. I had the good fortune of spending 50 years as an innovator. I worked at Apple Computer, I worked at Bose, I went to MIT, I went to Juilliard. I've been really, really lucky to be around a lot of smart, creative people, and they didn't tell me what to do too much. So I got to be an involuntary innovator because nobody told me what to do. At least I've told that to them, and they said, no, we told you what to do, but you didn't listen. So I think part of being an innovator is not listening when people tell you not to do stuff. And these 1,000 pages of blog postings resulted in a book. And I should have held the book so I can show it. Can I borrow the book for you to hold up? Could we, so the camera could see it? So, hey, we could always edit this out, right? So I wrote this book called Involuntary Innovator because I've been talking about the fact that it is an involuntary thing and the world doesn't understand it that much. So I started something called the Silicon Valley Innovation Institute in 2005. And I've been making blog postings, and I now have 900 pages of blog postings about innovation. So this book is like the first 100 blog postings turned into a book. And there's 4 more books. It's a series of 5 books all about innovation, innovators, and innovation relationships. So there are a lot of books written about innovation, but the world still doesn't know what it is, and that's why I had to start an innovation institute in Silicon Valley in 2005, because I knew all these brilliant people who were not making any money, not getting listened to, not having their ideas get adopted to, and that's when I began to realize that the decision makers and the permission givers did not know what to do with innovators because innovators had a different set of priorities. Innovators wanted to change the way things were, and the people who were in charge didn't. So the people who are the investors, decision makers, permission givers, when you go to them and say, hey, I would like to change your company, your business, your product line, the default answer is no. And even if you said, well, last time we made $1 billion, which I did at Bose and at Apple, they still say no because it's a change of the status quo. They might lose power. And I don't think that the decision makers will ever learn to think the way the innovators do. But innovators can actually learn how to deal with decision makers and permission givers a lot better by asking a very simple question. Instead of saying, what's in it for me, saying, what's in it for we? The other people who you want to work with, they have to get something out of it too. Otherwise, they're not going to want to hang out with you, and they're not going to do it. And you can't really innovate by yourself. You need other stakeholders. So the 5 books in this series, because they're all related to this is a sampler of the 1,900 to 1,000 pages of blog posting. I write one every day. It'll be 1,000 pretty soon. The first one is called Involuntary Innovator. It's a sampler and an overview. The second one is called Creative Outlier. Creative outliers are the population from which involuntary innovators come, from which all innovators come. They first start by having more creativity than the normal person. Not that they were necessarily born with it. They just were too stubborn to not be creative. So you have to sort of start as a creative outlier, and to become a sustainable innovator, there are a lot of steps, and that's what these postings are about in the 12 chapters in this book, is how do you get from being a creative outlier to an innovator? And one of the big differences between a creative outlier and an innovator is a business model. Creative people frequently do not have a business model. Creative people frequently create their own world and go live in it. I have many artist friends who would rather stay in their studio than come out and talk to the world. I know many computer scientists who would rather stay in their lab and not come out and talk to the world. I know many musicians who make up their own music and they play it and they don't care if it's part of what the rest of the world is doing. And they're great, but they don't ever get any gigs because they never ask the question, well, what's in it for the other people? So if you're going to be an innovator, you're going to have to worry about other people. You can't just worry about you. And since a lot of creative people do create their own world because they're creative, they have to sort of force themselves to come out of it. I started as an introvert, but I invented a bunch of stuff and nobody paid attention, so I had to convert into being an extrovert. Otherwise, nobody would listen to anything I said. This started in around 1980 when I came up with the world's first digital piano, and everybody told me that was a stupid idea. Why do we need a digital piano? But I managed to ship the product when I was at Bose by 85, and then Yamaha immediately copied it, and so did Technics, and we took out restraining orders. But could you imagine a whole world saying, we don't need a digital piano. Why would we need that? That's what they told me for 5 years. And when I put the first speakers and microphones and computers at Apple, they told me that was a really bad idea too. Why would a computer need a sound system? Seriously, I spent 5 years building prototypes, flying from Bose to Apple, meeting with John Scully, saying, hey, let's make computers emotionally relevant. This was Apple Computer. They also told me I was an idiot from 85 to 90, and then they changed their mind and they hired me and put me in charge of sound. It takes a lot of persistence if you want to innovate. It's not for the weak-hearted. It takes a lot of effort. So I'm going to play an example of something that's in the category of innovation with this keyboard here. And again, for the music people out here, I need to explain a little bit. This keyboard has no sounds in it. This Macintosh has all the sounds in it. This keyboard has no power. It's not plugged into the wall. The Macintosh has a battery. This little skinny wire is using the Macintosh battery to power this keyboard, which is amazing on its own to be able to like have a piano that doesn't need to be plugged in or it doesn't need strings, but it does something else. The new Apple technology, they have these M series of chips, much faster than other computers. It's so fast that you can have a mathematical model of a piano, a set of equations in the computer. And when I play these keys, which only send a signal out that says note on, note off, the equations get solved. And they go, well, we know how hard you hit it. We know how long we want that note to last, and we know what to do. That's a miracle. And it also has some sounds of basses in it. So since you already know that I like bass because I already played it twice, this is how you get to be a bass player with one hand. You hear that? But you still have another hand, so you get to be a bass player, and you could do something else too. So I haven't decided what I want to play yet. Yes, I will. I'll play something that's pseudo classical. This is called Bratat, B-R-A-T-A-T, and it for those who are musically minded, it's in two keys at one time. The goal was, can I be in one key with my left hand and another key in my right hand and then switch? So it starts in C in my left hand and in D in my right hand, and then it switches, and then it goes from E flat in my left hand to A flat. I know that this is a problem for most musicians when you try to jam with people because they don't know what key you're in. So, hey, innovators have problems. So this is Bratat. So the innovation part of that is, until the last few years, you could not do a battery-powered thing like that. There was no keyboard that you could battery with your laptop because there was no laptop that had enough juice to power a keyboard and also calculate the equations to make it sound like a piano and play back the samples of 60 gigabytes of bass samples. So even though this looks very, very simple, the amount of innovation in this little pile of stuff is a fairly mind-blowing thing. And for Musicians, the barrier now to go out and play gigs is so much less. You have so many more options. So that's enough about this. And I don't know if you're able to see the speaker on this side, but that was another innovation. This is a battery-powered sound system, which Bose made. The speaker's battery powered, the keyboard's battery powered, the laptop is battery powered, the bass doesn't need power. I've played this kind of setup in a field at a winery where there were no outlets anywhere around. You just couldn't do that stuff before. So this is serious amounts of innovation. So my last bullet is about innovation relationships. As I've mentioned, you can't really innovate by yourself. I mean, it took a lot of engineers to make each one of these things. And even when you're a musician, although some musicians can do solo gigs, like you, not all can. And they end up playing with bands or other people. And even if they can do a solo gig, it's sometimes more fun to play with other people anyway. Bottom line is innovators need to have innovation relationships. Innovation doesn't happen without innovators, and innovators don't get anything done by themselves. They need other stakeholders. And the stakeholders could be a lot of people. They could be investors, colleagues, family members, the people who let you play in their restaurant or make inventions in their lab. It takes a lot of people to innovate. So that means that besides being creative, you also have to be nice. You have to learn how to get along with people if you want to be an innovator. And even some of the high-tech titans who don't seem like they're very nice, I can assure you that they are extremely charming when they want to be. They look really, really nice. I spent 20 years in Silicon Valley watching a lot of charming technical titans look like they were nice, even when they weren't. Because if they weren't nice, you can't get smart people to work with you if you're not nice, because smart people have options. And the theory here is that the group mind is more powerful than the single mind. No matter how smart a person is, no matter how talented they are, a group of people is smarter than that. And a lot of brilliant people forget that, especially when they become billionaires. They forget that they used to be part of a group as well. But the group mind is always smarter than the individual mind. So A, innovation is a natural thing. We all have it. B, you're going to have to be really persistent. And C, you better get along with other people too. It's not good enough just to be really smart and creative. You don't get a pass. You don't get to be a jerk. You have to actually deal with the rest of the human race. And locally, we actually have here in Great Barrington a group called the Creators Flywheel. We meet in Great Barrington and Guido's at 11 o'clock every Wednesday. And there are about 10 people, and one's a filmmaker, and one is an actor, and one's a conductor of an orchestra, and one's a photographer, and one is a painter. There are a lot of talented people in the Berkshires. And we meet at Guido's at 11 on Fridays. And we actually have a website, too, called creatorsflywheel.com, creatorsflywheel.com. So I've been in this sort of business of creating groups of creative people for 30 years now. When I lived in Silicon Valley, I lived on the coast in Half Moon Bay, and I created a group called the Coastal Creators because there were a lot of creative people in Silicon Valley also. And we would have people who were writing rock operas and other people who were wood carvers and people who were writing poetry. Creative people need an audience. They need an outlet. They need other creative people to hang with to support their creative process. And that eventually turned into the Silicon Valley Innovation Institute. I even tried teaching it at a college for 5 years. I taught at the University of Silicon Valley, which at that time was called Cogswell College. I taught innovation management, which is a little bit of a laugh. It's kind of hard to manage creativity or innovation. But I did teach it for a few years, and people got degrees in it. And eventually it turned into the Innovation Institute because it occurred to me the greatest resource of all in the world was the human resource. And the human resource that was the most powerful was the creativity coupled with the tenacity and the insight. But a lot of it was being wasted because people didn't want to listen to them and because the creative people did not know how to have a good stakeholder relationship with the people they needed to work with. So that's why for the last 15 years, well, I guess now it's going on 19 years, that the Innovation Institute continues to have programs, and now it's going virtual. So that website is SVIII, Silicon Valley International Innovation Institute, SVIII.org. And the old one, which was not virtual, was SVII.org. And we had programs in Silicon Valley for 19 years because creative people need to hang out with other creative people. And most recently, I went back to school to study composition at Juilliard and started a group there called Studio Night. And we meet on the first Wednesday night of the month. So I was in Manhattan yesterday. And these are a bunch of composers who are trying to figure out how to get their art out into the world. So they have to start by being able to play it by themselves, otherwise, because they can't afford to hire an orchestra to play it. So we get together once a month. And on Fridays at 11, we have an online Zoom group called ICOCO, the International Innovators Collaborative Composers, IICOCO. So I'm sort of in the business of trying to enable innovative people to hang out with each other and do innovative stuff. So the book is not yet on Amazon because I'm still gathering feedback and finding typos, but you can get it from this website, involuntaryinnovator.com. And that's it. That's my music innovation musical talk.